Welcome to the Jury Podcast. Today's episode, we will be having a special episode as the final one. I'll be joined by Rayan here.
Yeah, that's why we got tea and we got musk as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful tea that Joseph just made for us in the kitchen. But
So,
yeah.
I was thinking, before we get into this podcast stuff, let's try a rust with our tea. Before it gets too cold.
I'll wait for a minute. That's good.
This is really good.
I love rust. You reckon you can make this yourself?
100%, maybe. As long as you have the right ingredients and you know how to make it, You need the technique, you need the recipes to make these kind of stuff.
Do you bake a lot or no?
I do bake, but I'm more into the pastry type of baking. So I make those cookies, I make those cakes, I make those brownies, all those sorts of exotic bakeries. What about you?
That's when you make the brookies. Remember you made the brookies for me?
Exactly.
That's
I did make it. I combined the concept of cookies and brownies together.
Yeah.
And made those brookies.
No, I like me brookies, but cookies. There's a secret thing, by the way. Brown butter. Brown butter is really, really good.
I agree with you there. There are so many recipes online where I saw it. Brown butter is something they always use to get that perfect dough.
Yeah, it's this is what you do, right? You take the pan, put it on like low heat,
Yeah.
put the butter in, and you whisk it until it's like brown. And it's like shocking because you're like, how's it gonna get brown? It's like this yellow butter or whatever. But the pigment, there's like this brown pigment that just shoots out.
Shoots it out, yeah.
And I'm not a chef myself, but like I just saw that happen, and my dad taught me it, right? And I was like, it's just like magic. So,
Yeah. That's really cool though.
yeah.
So your dad is the one who introduced you to this?
Yeah,
The
no.
whole brown butter stuff in bakery?
He does a lot of like spontaneous things, like where he just comes and he teaches me stuff. Like, for example, I could be like studying or whatever, and then he comes behind me and just chokes me. And this sounds ironic, but genuinely he does it as a form of training. Because himself, he was in the army and stuff. He was in Navy as well, and Secret Services in the Netherlands. And they just teach you that being spontaneous is like super important and stuff. And me being like this like Gen Z guy, I'm like trying to put it in my life, but it's like more as just being impulsive than being spontaneous. So
Yeah.
it's a little different. But yeah, he taught me a lot of stuff.
That's really cool. For me, in my case, I wasn't really there.
Yeah,
So-
your dad did.
Yeah, I did. So, but, at the end of the day, he was still my dad. There were still some things he taught me.
Yeah.
And that is still important to me to this day.
What would you say he taught you? Like that you remember?
He's definitely taught me the value of respecting people. That is one thing that I've always picked up from him. Because as much as he might ignore others or not take responsibility for himself, he still shows that similar sort of respect to others he meets. Doesn't necessarily have to be someone close to him. It's the people making that first impression and respecting them.
Do you think that comes from his culture, or is it more like from his character and stuff? Like the person he is?
It's rather than a character or a culture, it's more of a habit. Because in my family, it's really much of a business family. So there's always like this clash of family affairs and everything, where there's business deals going on. If this business deal is not going to work well, then we're not going to get along, because we're trying to join families. That means join businesses.
Yeah.
That's the whole concept. That's the whole point of merging. So that habit of always looking out for who's around you and respecting them to avoid danger is something that people who are arranged in this whole family thing.
It's a very like vigilant trait.
It is,
very
yeah.
vigilant.
And it's actually a very traditional trait in past times. Because if we were to look at America, let's say, where there was the concept of old money and new money.
Yeah.
Old money is something that completely follows this trend. They're trying to pass on the generational wealth, and that's through marriage, to merge businesses to survive, or passing it on to someone else in the family or someone who is reputable for it. And what do people always do? Respect these sorts of people to be able to get that chance. You know, and
Do you-
that's a habit.
Do you ever feel like that respect, like it loses its like innate like purpose, because that makes like relationships between people seem very transactional?
I do.
Because you were saying it's like family and business, but when do you draw the line between family and business when you're like interacting with them?
So for me, to this day, I still struggle to differentiate between.
I would know why, you know?
Yeah, because it's so artificial sometimes that you really don't know who the fuck actually trusts you. And in my case, I don't know if my family members actually like me for me. What if it's for my money? You know, there's a lot of whys.
I feel like there's a way you can tell though sometimes, because
There are some times, but
and I have this theme that I see everywhere, and I call it superficial conversation. So anytime I'm talking to someone and they are like this so-called family friend of mine, I always try and see if it's superficial conversation. So based on the things they say, based on the way they say it, like the intonation and stuff, I can tell if they're just trying to be transactional or if they're being genuine. So I'm trying to tell in between those. Do you ever like try to see like, oh, this person's being fake with my family or not, or is it a hard?
100%.
Yeah, I know you're perceptive like that. Yeah,
Because I'm a very observant guy, and you've known me for a long time.
I have no. Yeah, you
I
are
am
observant.
always very observant. I always look at people. I always try to grasp what kind of person they are before I talk to them. That's one habit that I've picked up for myself, I guess. Like all the time when I see new people, I don't approach them first. First, I analyze, see what kind of people are there. How can I, with my own character, get along with them? Because I have a very gentle side of mine, you know, that I understand. It's that I want to get along with the people I see. At the very least, I don't want to get off on the wrong page. That's why I always step back first. I see what's in front of me. I'm like, okay, with what I have, with who I am, how can I adapt with them? How can I get along with them? You know?
Where did this like survival mode come from? Because I feel like you're, yes, you're very observant, very perceptive, but I feel like in its like, if we were to categorize most of your traits, it's very primal.
Yeah.
It's very like, oh, I'm in survival mode. I need to be vigilant. So you were talking about earlier, you're like, I need to be cautious with people. I need to be transactional sometimes because I need to get what I want. People can be seen as contingencies. And then now you just said you have to adapt.
Yeah.
So you're cautious, you're transactional, and you're adaptable. These are very primal things.
Very primal things.
So do you feel like this is like almost part of our human nature? Like where do you think that stems from? Is that like a family thing? Was it taught you? Religion maybe? I don't know. Like
It can be
very-
referred to as an unexplainable thing. When you think about it, there are so
like the
many
notion of life.
something like that.
Yeah.
But there are so many things about us that we don't even know. How is it possible for the human brain to actually process what the hell, what we're seeing? You know, it's mind-boggling to actually grasp the fact that our mind can process all this information, keep it in store for 80, 90 years.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. And the fact that we can process these images, see color, we don't understand it ourselves.
But
That
sometimes it begs not the question, but sometimes it agonizes me because I'm like always asking myself, there must be why, you know, there must be a
why,
reason
yeah.
why, and there's always been a reason why. Otherwise, we wouldn't be studying so much stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But then I always have to come to a stop and be like, no, you know what, like just let that one sit. You know, that one's just there because it is like, especially the primal thing. I'm very, very fascinated by everything that's human nature, and I try to see it around me all the time. So I'm like, oh, this is a very primal state that we are in right now. Okay. And then I ask myself, okay, why surviving? Why am I being like very like, oh, I need to survive this today? You know, is it because I see fear? Is it like my coping mechanism for something? But then I just realize, okay, that's just part of who I am, and it's gonna show. And when it doesn't, I can start processing it.
In my case, from an early age, I've always been in the presence of a little struggle. For example, I've had the struggle of dealing with myself. And what I mean by that is when my parents were always in disputes, I had to find a way for myself to cope with what's going on. As a child, I didn't know what was going on, really.
Yeah.
But I still had that small awareness to the fact that there is a problem going on. And I need to do something about it. So I think that's what stemmed this whole observant type of character. Before I wanted to approach anyone, I wanted to know who they are. it's like whenever I see that, or whenever I think about doing that, I think it comes from when I saw my parents when they were young, and I'd see and observe how they interacted with it, and I saw that there was a lot of problems. And most problems, the most main reason of all these problems is external things.
Yeah.
Nothing
Money or the
Money,
environment around
or
them or people.
what the money is being used
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
Who are
always.
they talking to? Always these things are coming up. And I realized, okay, external things, so I need to know what's going on around me. That's the first thing.
No, I resonate with that a lot because what I was asking before, I was like, is it a coping thing? For me, and I resonate with your situation a lot, is like growing up, all right, and still now, when I saw my parents and the way that they converse with each other, and then I compare that to like my aunts and uncles, I would get sick. I swear, I had nights I was in Morocco, right, and I would get like sick in the car because I'd see my uncle and aunt being like lovey, but not lovey in the like, oh my god, you're being too like, sexual or anything like that. Just like genuine love, right? Genuine adornment of another person.
Yeah.
And it would make me sick because I was like, I'm not used to this, and this gives me like an artificial feel. And then when I would observe my parents and I'd see the way they were conversing, it was very like, okay, why'd you spend my money? Or why'd you do this with it and stuff? And I understand the factor and the importance of money and stuff, especially after all this I've been through. But when I would compare a marriage that was going well and then a marriage that wasn't going well, it made me very sick, but it also gave me the perk that I started being very aware. And I started overthinking what people would tell me and the way they would act. Because anytime my parents would like talk, they would like converse wrongly and they would converse well with me, I was always trying to see, is he being genuine or is he just doing this to like get a point to my mom or get a point here and there?
And I think that's a real big problem with all of us observing people, is that we
Overthink. I
too
hate
much.
overthinking is
And
up
we
there.
can't help it, really. We always think of what ifs, and then we think of the second situation.
Because
the worst
does
situation.
being right always mean it's a good thing? Because
It does not.
Because overthinking and asking all these what ifs and trying to read into everything, you're like, okay, but I'm gonna see the truth and I'm gonna understand why it's right and correct.
Yeah.
But it's not nice to be always
Yeah,
right.
it's not.
It really isn't, by the way.
Because
it's not.
sometimes there's ways when you overthink it, and there are times when you're right, when that overthinking is correct, and it's not a good feeling.
And if it's right about something that's wrong, then that's when you're gonna be like, oh, I could have saved my time maybe distracting myself instead of dwelling on it. Because if you're right on something that's gonna mess your life up, for example, if you're right about your parents divorcing, that's
What
not.
can you do about it?
What you can't do anything. That's why.
That's the problem. We don't think about what can we do about it. We just think
we
about
just think
what's
about,
gonna happen.
what is it exactly?
Yeah.
And I always tell myself, if you can't control it, if you can't change it or change the outcome, don't think about it. Don't think twice about something you can't control. Just move on. That's what life is about.
That
You
is
just
what
move
life
on.
is about. Let me check the timer real quick.
Yeah.
All right, we're at 13:21. It's been quite a long podcast too,
Yeah.
as well. And I think we got a real good grasp of how, we both are quite the observing pair or couple of people. We're
Yeah.
observant, and discussing this, we realized that there's a lot of similarities.
There's a lot of
sometimes,
similarities.
but we're so different at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and they stem from a manner of coping.
Yeah.
And it's a very primal thing that we see in other humans, and we all have similarities towards it, but we have different situations. So we have our differences, yet we cope it in a similar way.
And that's why I always think about this at the end of everything. No matter what kind of struggle someone faces, no matter how trivial or how extreme it is, at the end of the day, when one is in his funeral bed, he has faced the same amount of pain as anyone else who will fall to their funeral bed. I believe that pain and suffering can come in extremes and even trivial matters. But over time, when that life comes to an end, that's when it truly equalizes. God equalizes. all
Full
of
circle,
that.
Joseph. Full circle.
Full circle.
You know what I find beautiful about life is that you're brought into this life with two white sheets around you like a baby crying. You go down in the ground with two white sheets around you. And I love full circle. Like I don't know if it's a theory, I need to read more into it, but I like the fact that you start and you end where you started. You go back. I was actually pondering about that recently, because I was thinking about applying to the Netherlands, and one of my unis was in The Hague, and that's where I was born. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of my even close friends don't know that because I don't really talk about that. It wasn't the greatest time in my life, but The Hague wasn't. It was always it always had an indexical meaning because it's like the city of law, the city of beauty. It's like this beautiful city, right? And it's known around the world. Yet I didn't have good memories there. I didn't have fond memories. And for me to go back there and to try to change that narrative, that's full circle, Joseph. And it's very interesting to me. I don't know if a lot of people have that, where they go and they reiterate something from their past, but do you have anything like that?
Well, I've had my fair share of troubles, and so far, because I've been in this single country itself, I've constantly lived the same type of day, same type of life.
But when does that day get enough?
That day, there's no when you're living in one country for a long period of time, you don't really think about when does it get enough. You've accustomed yourself to
You
this.
conform to it.
You
okay.
conform to it, exactly. Like how you get used to there are couples around you, or how you get used to, okay, men can be more dominant in the workforce, and how women can also be less privileged. in
Yeah,
terms
you
of
don't
power.
ask why, you just
You
kind
just
of
accept it.
you accept it for what it is.
And in that situation, being brought up here, I've always accepted, okay, I'm here. I know that I'm not permanently a resident, but I'm here. I grew up here.
And I'm gonna be here for a while.
Quite a while.
So
but
let
I
it.
do want to go. I do want to escape. I want that longing feeling of escape.
What do you do? Or do you do temporary things to escape? Like, obviously, the long-term escape is okay. Go to uni, study from there, get your bachelor's, and from there we move. We get a job, we work, we know other environments, we study. But have you ever found a temporary way to escape? Because uni, it's nice to say, okay, uni is gonna save me, but uni is in a few months, and for a long time, it's been in a few years.
Yeah.
So, what were temporary things you did to just escape?
I think temporary things that I did were enact moments in my life where I felt like an adult. I felt independent. So let's say I have this big problem about myself where I'm a little delusional sometimes. I like to imagine scenarios to myself and live at it like I'm an adult. So let's say I'm in my room alone. I'm gonna get a book out. I'm gonna act like I'm journaling my finances for the future. It's ridiculous, but that was my way of coping. Because the thing about me is I was so
I approve of
desperate.
that.
I was so desperate to have that independent life, and it was at that time it was way too strong. That's why I was.
The feeling was, yeah.
The feeling was too much.
I think I do something similar that can be linked with delusion. You write it down, I talk it, or I speak it a lot.
Yeah.
And I always tell myself, your voice, so your own inner voice, is the one you hear the most all day. So make that a good voice. Make that a positive voice. And I'm not trying to be all this like guru, like, oh, you gotta be good to
It's the
yourself.
truth.
But it's the truth. The truth is, you're gonna wake up, first person you see, you. First person you feel, touch, first person you're gonna put your clothes in, you. Alright? The first person you're gonna say something negative to you, it's probably you. Alright? So if you're gonna hear yourself so much, if you're gonna be alone with your thoughts a lot and you're gonna overthink, especially us overthinkers, fellow overthinkers, might as well make that a positive voice. So I've tried to, as you were talking about earlier, habits, I've tried to make it a habit to, when I talk to myself, make sure I don't criticize myself. I just say, look, I messed up, we move on. Because that's
Acceptance is hard to do.
accept it, but it's so hard to accept.
It's hard to accept. And I think that's one of my strong suits at this point. I'm someone who can accept things. And I have accepted with a lot of things. The fact that I have a single mother who is paying for me fully. I have a dad who is there, but doesn't support me as much.
Yeah.
I still love him to the end of the day, but
You've accepted that's how
I've
things
accepted
are,
that's how
and you're not
things
going to
are.
have them completely.
that's why, because I've accepted it, I'm trying to do something about it. That's
Better than
that's
just
my-
dwelling on it,
Exactly.
right? Better, yeah.
Which is a form of my character growing. Before, I'd only think about it and I didn't know what to do. I just thought about it, worried about it, that's it. But now, I've always tried to do things that would get me closer to that step of figuring it out.
It's dangerous to dwell. I really do think it's dangerous to dwell because, especially if you're dwelling on someone else, and I'm gonna give this tip out there because it works for me, maybe not for everyone, but if it works for you, try it out. If you ever dwell on someone, something they've done to you or something they said and you're like, oh, did you mean it that way, whatever. Start dwelling on yourself, because if you shift the focus to you and being like, oh, why am I obsessing over what this person did, and you understand, oh, it's for a very selfish reason or for a very small reason, then you stop dwelling on that person. So, for example, if you obsess on someone for saying something like a stupid remark, then ask yourself, why am I dwelling on that? It was superficial. It was stupid.
You really wonder, why did you even
You're like,
start?
why did I even start thinking about this? So if you start doing that, then it makes you shift focus on yourself. And at the end of the day, everyone's favorite subject to talk about is themselves. So start doing that. Start feeding yourself what you want, and then you'll benefit from that. You'll stop dwelling on superficial conversation.
Well, I think we've hit way above the time limit. Let's hope this video gets through.
Hopefully.
And
It was nice
thank you
talking
very
to you.
much. Thank you very much for joining me. That's the end of the Cherry Podcast.